All right, so we're coming to you live with the World Citizen Talk here. I'm very excited for today's conversation. I have with me here World Citizen number 1, Gary Davis, and WSA's President, David Gallup. We're going to be discussing the frequently asked questions of world government and world citizenship. We have a bunch of questions set up. Hopefully this will be a series, and we'll get to a lot of the questions that aren't covered in today's chat. So first, I'd like to start off with the world government philosophy, and Gary, if you don't mind, I'll ask you, what is a world citizen, and what does it mean to be a world citizen?
Well, these are big questions, and I think I can do no better than to start off with a quote from my teacher, Guru Nataraja, which got his telephone there ringing. Anyway, Guru Nataraja makes a quotation in his memorandum on world government, and it's very succinct. Humanity is one. Humanity is one. And he says this is the a priori given basis of the world government outlined in this memorandum. The recognition of the unity and solidarity of humankind follows from the correct application of the scientific or unitive approach to the problems of humanity. Just as belief in many gods is incorrect, so when humanity is considered relativistically as consisting of closed groups, however big or justified in the name of power or practicability, such a view violates its first and fundamental principle of the indivisible unity of humankind. Humanity is one by its common origin, one in its common interests and motives of happiness here on earth in everyday living, and one in its relationship to the aspirations and ideals which bind human beings together by bonds of sympathy for each other. Now here's the key. A unitive and absolute value is at the basis of all human life. This high human value knows no frontiers, either actual or ideological. It makes no discrimination between rich or poor, high or low, civilized or backward. Sympathy for suffering, and indignation against injustice to fellow men transcends time and crime and reaches out evenly or pointedly, as the case may deserve, to the uttermost recesses of the one world which man inhabits. That's a succinct statement that you can take for truth, absolute truth. Everyone can accept it. And that last thing, that last moment, that last sentence about territory, you see, nation states and territory or world government go together. We live on the planet Earth. It's our one planet. There may be other sentient beings beyond it, but for the moment, in this history, this is our planet. So your first question, what is a world citizen? Well, a world citizen, you're putting two words together, and then those two words exemplify a new era, a paradigm shift, you might say, in human terms. Buckminster Fuller used to say that the first world citizens were the pirates. Very interesting statement, because the pirates were roaming the oceans, and the oceans have no frontiers. So now we're living in a moment when we have obliterated, in many ways, the frontiers. This program is a perfect example of it. Technologically, electronically, etc. Anybody listening to me, anybody watching me, etc., can be anywhere in the world with a computer, just tie in and so forth. And it's not me. They call me the first world citizen, but we are all the first world citizen. And that's the truth. So that's my first answer to this question.
Very well put. And David was actually holding up the, for anyone interested, that was the Memorandum on World Government that's also found on worldservice.org. That where Nataraja Guru makes that memorandum there. All right, so my next question would be, what is the world government? Why is it important to me? And why have I never heard of this before?
Well, David, you want to take that, or shall I take that? What is the world government? Well, okay, I'll be succinct. I discovered when I was 26 years old, after having been a bomber pilot in World War II, that the government has imposed its frontier on my mind and on me. And that being in a B-17 and killing people in Brandenburg and so forth was not who I really am. So I had to think that through. Who am I? What is my role in life? I'm a human being. So I decided that I would get rid of the imposition of the frontier world, the nation-state world, which had put me in that plane, and claim my higher allegiance to humanity. And that became very simple, because each one of us watching me is what we call a sovereign human being. What does that mean? It means that you have the right to choose your own political allegiance. No one can impose that on you. That's what they call inalienable rights of choice. Okay, so I decided that I would, first of all, divorce myself from the nation state, which is legal, and take my sovereignty as a human being and place it on the global level. Now that means that I was then, as a subject of a new code of conduct. What was that global level? Well, it's been enunciated for thousands of years: do unto others as you would they do unto you. It's a code of morality and so forth, and fits into that code of happiness that I just quoted from Nataraja. So that means that I was in a new state of governing, and I could govern myself. But not only could I govern myself, but as a member, I'm not alone, as a member of the human race. That was the holistic, and that's what we call humanity. So put those two together. You, as a sovereign human being, allied directly, intimately, by birth with humanity. And you might say that is the world government.
Very nice. All right, moving on with the philosophy, just a few more questions here, and then we'll go on to the world government structure. How can a world government work when there are so many different countries, religions, cultures, languages, and viewpoints?
David, that's yours.
Well, I have a question to follow that question. How can any government work? It's a question that any people who want to live and work together anywhere in the world have to answer. They have to come up with a system that will function to serve each other, a system by which their daily lives are made easier. Why do we, as human creatures, we tend to flock together? That can sometimes cause discord. It can sometimes cause anger and frustration to try to get along with each other. So if we can devise some rules that will help us to get together and live together, then that's how a government can work, whether it's locally or globally. And so despite the fact that we have differences, there are some basic similarities, some basic things that we have as humans, things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, whether it's breathing fresh air, finding food and fresh water to drink, that we share with each other. And because these basic principles of living are so crucial and life is so precious, we're saying that we can devise from a principle, from an ideology, and through a strategy and tactics, government of, by, and for the people of the world. And so we can transcend all of our differences, but it's going to take education. It's going to take understanding of who we are. I mean, Gary always likes to say the most important question now is, who are you? And so to understand that we're all one, that we're all part of this one human family, and that family and the earth are already a system that are functioning. In fact, we're even functioning on other levels, whether it's right now through technology, whether it's through dealing with the environment. All these other levels that we deal with, we're already working together. And so it's a question of turning towards the politics, and I think that's really, besides law, the politics issue of politics is the main issue of this world government, to help people to understand that we can have differences, and that's okay, but we can transcend them, that we can move beyond them, because we have other more important endeavors to reach us out to the stars, or to make everyone's life, everyone's daily life better. So it's easy to transcend those differences just through education. I think that that's sorely lacking in much of the world. So law, politics, and education, an education that explains the law and explains how we can work together politically, is really what we need to deal with that concern of differences. So I mean, the principle is that we have one world. We already know that. We can see it from outer space. The ideology is the fact that there are a set of universal human rights that we all share. That's the ideology that we have agreed, or that we are agreeing as world citizens to respect and to promote. So if you put the principle, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if you can know that we're one human family, and that basic documents like that Universal Declaration of Human Rights help us to affirm and respect the rights that we know that we have, but we have to know them first, then we can move on into the strategy of making this government function despite our differences, despite our different religions and outlooks and economic status, or whatever other separation that people seem to put on each other. So that strategy was to educate, but one of those ways to educate is by registering as world citizens. One of the main functions of the world citizen government is to provide, for example, we have an application form which I can show, which is available by post as well as on our website. You can register officially, legally, politically as a world citizen. And so it's that strategy of education that will help everyone to come to understand who we really are right now, in the here and now. And then, of course, there's other basic strategies that any functioning government uses to help bring people together. I mean, to bring people together despite their differences, whether it's creating, for example, a world anthem. And I know Gary has actually written a poem, a world poem, which is like a world anthem to unite us in community as one human family. Or it could be our simple, we have a little button that says, I'm a world citizen, because we each are. It's tactics like that. I mean, we have other projects and programs, whether it's World Money, World Postage Stamps, the World Court of Human Rights, which I know you and Gary Vibro have already talked about. These are the tactics that we use to, in a sense, inculcate that government, to help us, once again, transcend those differences. So those differences are minor in comparison to all that we really have in common. So we're here planting those seeds of world citizenship.
Absolutely.
And
Okay.
I'll add one thing to that, we've entered a new age, obviously. We all know it, as of 1945. We've gone from relative war to absolute war. The nuclear age is genocidal. So we have no choice. We have no choice except to recognize the unity of the human race because we're all there together. The nuclear bombs are ready to go. And so that's an ultimatum, which is facing you and me and every single person on this planet. There's no other way. We have to have a government which neutralizes or it brings the idea of war in a criminal court. And that's what the World Court of Human Rights is designed to do.
Well said. And that actually leads up to my very next question, which is, how will you prevent war?
War is not a cause, it's an effect. We think of peace and war as causes. They are not. The war is an effect of anarchy. There's no laws to stop it. And therefore, you have to replace it with laws. And those codes of conduct have to be global. Obviously, since war is global, the codes of conduct have to be global. But that's easy to do because we've had sages, gurus, masters from time immemorial tell us about codes of conduct. There's nothing new about that. We learned that from kindergarten up. Well, now we have to apply on the global level. The difficulty is that we have politically, we're in a framework which goes back to other centuries, pre-industrial, pre-electronic, pre-space, etc., and imposed upon a world where there's no distance between you and me. There's no time between you and me. We're all there. And that's the dimension we have to recognize. That's what they call, that's the primal shift now. But it's all in our minds. Our minds. We are conscious. And the consciousness now is global, and we all have it.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to add, maybe the better question to ask is not how we can prevent war, but how do we outlaw war? I think that was the point Gary was getting to, because well, I don't know if you can ever actually prevent war. I mean, people, whether it's because they are greedy or needy or crazy or whatever reason, might for some reason want to fight with somebody else. And so it's a question of creating a framework, a global framework of law that will allow us to live together peacefully. I mean, peace is a consequence of law, which was what Gary was saying. So it's really a question. I like to rephrase the question and say, how do we outlaw war? And that's really going to be one of the main functions of this new World Court of Human Rights, which we're excited about at the Universal Rights Festival that we're having this coming December in Los Angeles for the 65th anniversary of the Declaration of Human Rights. We've talked about how at that event we're going to actually call for outlawing war. So it's a question of not prevention, but dealing with war as humans tend to do, unfortunately.
Well, I'll add a little footnote to that, because the Nuremberg Principles in 1945 made some laws, quote unquote laws, and one of them laws against war and so forth, and one of them was crimes against humanity. They said there are crimes against humanity, and they said the Nazis committed those crimes and therefore they're indictable. Well, that was the first time in judicial history, as far as I know, that humanity was considered a plaintiff. And then the ICC took that over and put crimes against humanity in its statute. Well, what is the greatest crime against humanity? Obviously, it's war. So that's why when David says we have to outlaw war, that means a judicial system by which that is done. And we know how to make courts. There are 2 courts sitting in The Hague right now, but the one last court is our court, the Court of World Citizens. And we're taking the idea that crimes against humanity, we all are part of humanity, so each one of us, each human being is a micro-defendant. We're litigants, all of us, in this court. And we're going to develop it. It takes funding, it takes organization, but there are thousands upon thousands of jurists throughout the world, Supreme Court judges and so forth, just waiting for us to make the call to come into service and defend humanity legally.
Very nice. Okay, so the next question is, what is the biggest adversary or difficulty in achieving a fully functioning world government?
Ignorance. In short, we are ignorant of who we are, although we should be cognizant of who we are. We grow up learning who we are in the family and in society and so forth. But on the global level, suddenly there's a blank. There's a barrier, and it has to do with nationality. Nationality, my country. You see, my country has turned into a false idea. Patriotism. The country now is the world. Nationality has carved off pieces of the world and said this is a country. Well, this is fictional. It goes back to the 18th, 19th century. But we're conditioned to think of, oh yes, we belong to a country right from birth. But the contradiction of that is the first article in the Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They're endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. See, it's the territory. We have to get out of the idea that we belong to a country. In fact, the world passport is a good tool to get that idea out of our minds, because the world passport sounds ridiculous to have. What do you need a world passport for if the world has no frontiers? But somehow we have to educate the people of the world to say, wait a minute, no one has the right to tell you you can't travel on your own planet. So that's why I started a world passport. I needed a passport. I was stateless, and I traveled with it. Do we have a passport to show, David?
You know, that was the one thing I don't have, although you can see behind me the front of the world passport.
Well, I should have had my passport.
I could grab mine. It'll take a quick second to do, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, 1 second.
That's an amazing black. The passport is a dynamic tool. It's yours. It belongs to you. It's your private property. It's based upon Article 13.2 of the Declaration of Human Rights, which says everyone has the right to leave any country, note the word country, including his own, and to return to his country. Doesn't say state, doesn't say nation, and so forth. So here we got a passport showing. Show that up, Libro. Okay.
This is the world passport?
7 languages. Open the front page.
Okay.
Every passport now has to be machine readable. So this passport conforms to the International Civil Aviation Code and so forth. And David, you might give an idea of how many passports, et cetera, and what the process is.
Yes. Well, World Service Authority has been issuing documents since 1954. We estimate about 5 million documents in total have been issued to individuals all over the world, which includes the World Passport, a World ID card, World Birth Card and Birth Certificate, World Citizen Registration Card and Certificate, an exit visa, a residence permit. There's a World Political Asylum Card. Basically, we've created Gary has created and World Service Authority has perpetuated an understanding of us having tools. These documents are tools to help us claim our human rights. So we've actually created documents that pertain to our innate and inalienable human rights, many of which have been reaffirmed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that Gary showed on camera a little while ago. And for example, in particular, the World Passport reaffirms our innate and inalienable right to freedom of travel, which is stated in Article 13 of the Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state, and more importantly, everyone has the right to leave any country, including one's own, and to return to one's country. If you put those two together, it means we have a right to travel freely as human beings wherever we want to on our own planet. No one should tell you you can't travel freely on your own planet. But in addition to that declaration, that innate and inalienable right has been reaffirmed in treaties like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Article 12 of that covenant once again reaffirms that everyone has the right to leave the country and return to the country, or a country. Over 100 national constitutions affirm the right to freedom of travel. So we know that right is not just something that we can say that we have innately and inalienably, but all governments, all UN member states have agreed to respect it, even as members and signing the UN Charter in Articles 55 and 56, they have to confirm that they will fulfill their obligations to respect fundamental rights, one of which is our right to travel. And why is this right so important? Well, this right, linked with who we are as world citizens, are so important because if we can't claim that right, if we are under threat of torture or detention or persecution and we can't go somewhere else, well, then our other rights, whether it's to freedom of expression, freedom of association, will be vitiated. So it's really crucial. It's a really crucial right upon which many other rights are based. And so when you get the World Passport, you aren't necessarily, at the same time, although you can, registering as a world citizen. You can do that at the same time or separately. But in a sense, when you're carrying a world passport, you are identifying yourself as human or as a sentient being, first and foremost. All those other lower level allegiances don't matter when you're carrying the world passport. And I think, back to that question about the difficulty of having a fully functioning world government is, on Gary's point about ignorance, by people registering as world citizens and getting a world citizen card and certificate and people carrying a world passport, they are starting all over the world to identify themselves as world citizens, as humans first and foremost. So it's, I mean, the purpose of this organization, in a nutshell, as we've already said, is to outlaw war, to have a world of peace based upon law. But it's the underlying, I guess, strategy and then the tactics is to be able to say, well, this is who I am, and to prove it. I mean, up until Gary's creation of the world passport, or even the world citizen card after the founding of the world government in 1953, people could say, yes, I'm a world citizen. But now they can really prove it. They mean it. I was once, if you don't mind me telling a really short story, I once was taking a tour of the European court system in Strasbourg in France, and the tour guide asked where everyone was from, and she came to me, the last person in the line in the tour, and she asked me, and I said, Je suis citoyen du monde, I'm a world citizen, and I'm born on planet Earth. And she looked at me, and she's like, well, where were you born? So I got out my world citizen card and showed it to her. She's like, oh, where can I get one of those? So just the fact of being able to ID ourselves as who we are, first and foremost, as part of this human family, is what will help to deflect or transcend, again, that ignorance that is, in a sense, causing us to take the time, so much time that is taking to have this fully functioning structure be working as we want it to be. I'd also add, if you don't mind me just continuing the thought, one more small part. is that it's not just also ignorance, but it is also lawlessness. And one of the main functions of the world citizen government is to establish the ligaments, you could say, the structures or institutions of law like that World Court of Human Rights, which will allow humans to interact based on a set of principles and rules like human rights, or universal human rights that we already know exist and we've already written down, but can be adjudicated. So it's a question of, well, ignorance of who we are and ignorance of the law, ignorance of the power of law even. And that's why it's so crucial. I'm so happy that we can have these kinds of conversations, because this can be watched by anyone in the world. It's a little, not only is it a little civics lesson, it's a little lesson in understanding who we are and understanding the law. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, in addition to that, I'm just going to show one book, which we've written a lot of books on this. Passport to Freedom is a manual that I wrote. I don't know, it seems to be upside down or whatever, but it's Passport to Freedom, and you'll find it on the website. And it contains the solution, that is, the answers to all these questions that we're getting now. And the other book I want to bring out just briefly, because if any judge is watching or any jurist watching, I'd like you to know this particular book, because this is a book of habeas corpus. I don't know, Vibro, why does it turn it around? Maybe it's...
No, it's showing up well.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yep.
Now, this was written by a jurist, Louis Kuttner, who started Amnesty International, and he took the idea, the judicial principle, the sacred judicial principle of habeas corpus, was started back in Magna Carta, 1215, and he said, let's take this principle and have a world habeas corpus court, and so forth. So any jurist, please get a hold of this. I think it may be out of print, but you can find it in the library. And this is one of the bases of our World Court of Human Rights, because we say nations cannot put people away and not give them a trial. And this is happening all over the world. And all you have to do is look at the front pages of the New York Times every Sunday. So this program actually is a salute to Louis Kuttner, who was the first Chief Justice of this court. The court is already actually established, 10th of June, 1974, in Sausheim, France, and I appointed Louis Kuttner as the Chief Justice. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. So this is what we are doing. We're forming this court. We're getting Chief Justices now who are down the line for world law, enforceable world law, and so forth. So that's my second book. Carry on.
Very nice. Okay, so we're coming on the midpoint mark here. We have a lot to cover. The structure now. There are a few questions in this category. How is world citizenship related, or how is citizenship rather related to government? And maybe you can answer that one for us, Gary.
Well, I'll answer quickly, and then David, you take over. See, government, we are the government. People are governments themselves, micro-governments. You get up in the morning full of energy, and you're all day you're exercising government. In other words, political choice, so forth. So we say now the political choice has to go the last level, which is global. And one of the greatest facts of our century is that time and space have collapsed and so forth, so that for the first time in our human history, everything is happening to you now. The input on you is total. And that's what war means. The input of war is total. So what is your output? We have to transform our individual activities onto a global level. And that's very simple to do, because that's where the human rights comes in. And that's your right, your absolute right to choose your own political allegiance, is the way government started in the first place. David, you're on.
Okay. I would like to, I guess I one of my roles is to challenge the questions, perhaps here, because I find myself doing that now. And so I would like to rephrase the question: what is a citizen, and what is a government? And then show how the two are corollaries, how they come together. So I'll take a few minutes here just to go through that. Well, what is a citizen? A citizen is an individual, human being, with rights and responsibilities within a particular communal framework. What does that mean? Maybe those words are strange to people. Well, if you have rights, that things that you can do or want to do, and responsibilities, things that you should do because you're living with others, within a particular communal framework, that is within a society, whether it's a city, whether it's a département, whether it's the world or the universe. We are living within that, and when we come together and we can say, well, let's make some rules so that we can live together peacefully and serve each other, then we say, okay, I'm a citizen, you're a citizen, we're equal here in this discussion, and we can come together to decide what rules we want for our particular community. And so we come together, we say, let's maybe create our government in a certain format, whether there's a legislature or not, or whether there's just a court system, or whether there's an elder and others who sit around the elder to learn. Whatever format it takes, we decide how we're going to work and live together, and that becomes the government. And we even maybe build a building or institutions or structures like your judicial system, where people can go and hash out their differences without fighting, without shooting at each other or bombing each other. And that's really the government. What Gary has always said to me, David, government needs to be a service to humanity and to the individual. And that's what I like to say, service is our middle name. World Service Authority is the middle name of the administrative branch of the world citizen government. Well, why are citizen and government corollaries? Well, Gary started out, he already said that every citizen is the government, and the government is the citizens. People don't understand that. People sometimes think that the government is something far off in a way that they don't have any output to make a decision on. And Gary mentioned, and this is obviously the most crucial basis for our world citizen government, is that because the input on us as citizens, world citizens now, is global, but our output as if we were just as national citizens is only pretty much local, there's disparity there. So by linking citizenship with government at the highest level, at the global level, we can once again create that overall overarching framework of law, which will allow us to, like I said, settle our differences in a peaceful way as citizens of the biggest community or tribe, you could say, that we have, which is the one human family of which we're all a part. So citizenship means one of the responsibilities of a citizen is to work together with each other and to set down those rules and to create those institutions, whatever they might be or however they might look, that allow us to govern ourselves. I mean, it's really a question of self-government, individual government, self-government, and government of all for all, you could say. And certainly in the internet age, we're all able to participate in this. And these are some questions that are coming down the line, if we can get to them today, if not in a future show, where we can actually show how a world citizen is linked directly to the world government and how the world government is the world citizen, in a sense. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, very well put.
All right. And is the WSA affiliated with the United Nations?
Well, Gary, let me just show this thing before you maybe talk. But I think this Gary has written so much over his lifetime about all of these questions that so much of it you can find answers to in, like he said, the book Passport to Freedom, or in his autobiography, My Country is the World, in his new book, World Citizen Gary Davis Goes to Court. But this pamphlet or booklet called the 1978 Position Paper which you can also get through worldgovernmenthouse.com or worldservice.org in the catalog, is an explanation of the difference between the United Nations, you could call it a non-system, and the world government system. And let me stop there because I think, Gary, you may want to add to this point about how the world government is not at all or in any way affiliated with the United Nations.
Well, the succinct story was explained or exposed on the 22nd of November of 1948 when the General Assembly was in Paris. And this was 3 years, let's see, the United Nations started at 45, and this was 48, and they had in the preamble to the United Nations, or the charter rather, they say that human rights have to be protected by a regime of law. Human rights have to be protected by a regime of law. They didn't say world law, but human rights go. So anyway, Eleanor Roosevelt was chosen as the chairperson of a committee to devise this Declaration of Human Rights. Well, extraordinarily enough, they were in Paris, at the Palais de Chaillot, and the Cold War was going on in the ground floor between the Soviet Union, the blocs, and so forth, the nations. And we decided we would put on a show, our own show, We World Citizens. And we went to the balcony of this Palais de Chaillot. And I interrupted the session. I said, we interrupted in the name of the people not represented here. The nations you represent divide us and lead us to the abyss of total war. What we need is one government for one world. And if you don't do it, step aside, we're going to do it ourselves because we can be served by nothing less. Well, that went all over the world. That was the newsreel, days of the newsreel. And the next day, well, Eleanor Roosevelt wrote me a letter. Well, she wrote it in her column, actually, my day. And she said, Gary Davis and his friends, his world citizens, were saying that the nation state, the UN, should become a world government. And she herself said, but the nation states cannot be a world government. It's just a bunch of nations. And nations cannot extend their sovereignty, etc. So, believe it or not, she wrote next, she said, why don't you, Gary Davis, start the world's government, etc. If that's what you want, you're the citizens. And I was blindfolded. I couldn't believe that the president of, the wife of the president of the United States and the delegate to the United Nations and the chairperson of the committee to set up the Declaration of Human Rights publicly in her column on December 15th, 1948, said, Gary, do it yourself. If that's not confirmation that we're on the right track and that here's a member of the United Nations saying we can't do it. In fact, a letter was written to me by Dr. Herbert Evatt, and he said exactly the same thing. He said the United Nations were never set up to make peace. In the Charter, it says the United Nations, it's up to the main powers to make peace. And once they make peace, then it's up to the United Nations to maintain it. This was in a personal letter to me, which we read to 20,000 people at the Velodrome d'Hiver on the 9th of December, 1948. So that's my little addition to your story.
All right, and how many people have registered as world citizens?
David?
Well, since the idea of world citizenship came to the forefront when Gary renounced his citizenship back in 1948, there have been close to 2 million people who've registered officially and received a world citizen card to prove that they're claiming that status. Now, of course, over the years, there's been millions more people who've sent postcards and letters of support saying, I see myself as this, who may not even have had the understanding or the opportunity to register, especially early on when world citizenship came to the forefront. But we're still registering people today at World Service Authority every week. We get hundreds of pieces of mail, emails, faxes, phone calls from people all around the world who are striving for something more. They're coming out of maybe their cocoon, or they're coming out of their fear, perhaps, and seeing that they can be more than what perhaps one government has told them that they can be or must be. So we are continuing to offer this opportunity of everyone to register as a world citizen, to identify ourselves as such.
Give them the website name.
Okay, well, the website of World Service Authority is www.worldservice.org. World Service is one word and singular. And to get to the page, if you want to register, it's the same, www.worldservice.org/reg, that's reg.html. But you can also find that opportunity just by going to the homepage, worldservice.org. There's a link to application forms, and the first form on that list is the form to register as a world citizen.
And if you're near Washington, D.C., the address is 5 Thomas Circle, 20005.
Yeah, please, we welcome you to come into our office. We can issue you documents the same day. We'd be happy to greet you and tell you more in person.
Very cool. All right, so now a quick legal question. Is international law legitimate? And also, what is world law?
Gary, do you want to talk about the world law versus international law, and then I might think of something to add at the end?
Yeah. Well, world law, obviously, is pretty easy to define. You know, we're talking about nature now and how Mother Earth comes first. If we just destroy the Earth, then humanity's done. So that's the first law. The laws of, carbon dioxide has gone to 40 pp. What is it per the carbon dioxide level is way above what it was millions of years ago. So we're really in trouble, not only from a point of view of war, but also from a point of view of the environment. This is global. No one can deny it anymore. We're breathing out of the air and so forth. We're having tsunamis. We're having excessive heat. We're having droughts. We're having that. So this is all on the global level. No, not now. I'm in the show.
Well, it's almost 4 o'clock. Okay.
My beautiful Gabriel, Abigail, so forth. Anyway, so where was I?
You were talking
about the environmental hazards and
the necessity of world law because of nature. Yeah, that was the first part of it.
Yeah, well, when you talk about world, you're talking morality also. And you go back into history, all the teachers, all the masters, all the gurus have been talking to us about codes of conduct, and they're reciprocal. In other words, do unto others as you would do unto you, the golden rule. We learn that from kindergarten up. And that's part of the code. When you talk about world, then you're entering a moral area and so forth. It's not just territory anymore. It's both moral and territory. And we all know those codes, and we obey them, or we should, and so forth. And that's what makes us happy. Well, today, thank God we have this communication tool, which allows us to talk with each other all over the world and to say, what we want to say, yes and no, and so forth, and meet each other on through this the internet and so forth. So it's very obvious, and the children of the world actually are onto that right from the age of 13, 14, or maybe even younger. They're going to online, the largest school in the world, Montessori School, with 44,000 students in Lucknow. So they're all oriented toward the internet and so forth. I should turn my phone off. Anyway, so that's what. So you're adding two things here when you talk about world citizenship. You're adding both the whole moral history of mankind and the territory on which mankind lives. And if you read the Oath of Allegiance to world government, it's based upon 3 facts or 3 articles. One, absolute value. We call it absolute value. One world in which we live, and one humankind. And that is the basis, that's the fundamental framework, or the code of the world government of world citizens. How can you deny it? David, you're on.
Okay. Well, I talk about international law versus world law by mentioning that international law is really an oxymoron. You're putting two words together that don't make sense together. How can, and so when you say international law, law supposedly between nation states, how is that legitimate? How can you have law between equally sovereign states who are willing to wage war as a final resolution to conflict? I mean, let me state that in a different way. If nation states have the power to fight each other, and some have nuclear weapons and some don't, there's a big disparity. If they're willing to use those weapons, whatever they may be, nuclear or even just a tank, how is that law? If they're willing to use that when they get into a disagreement, that's not law. That's anarchy. So I would say that international law is an oxymoron. It's a fallacy. It's a farce. It's a smokescreen. And that world law, which is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is you could say a first attempt at humans codifying world law. And Gary brought up these points in a sense that world law is natural, it's social, it's conceptual, and one great example of world law already functioning, which Gary taught me, and I think about it all the time now, is the Universal Postal Union. You probably don't know or care who the Secretary General is of the Universal Postal Union, but you do care that your aunt far off in Shanghai or in Paris or wherever gets the postcard that you send her. So as long as the mail that you've filled out, the postcard or the letter, gets to the person that you are sending it to, then that system is functioning. So there actually already is, in a sense socially, a world government of the post. There are certain rules and regulations. There's a global mail manual and domestic mail manuals, and you have to, of course, properly address your envelope, and so you're following a rule, in a sense, a law that says put the address, your return address here, put your address to whom you're sending it to here, put your postage, which is in a sense your tax or your fee that you're paying, that small amount of money on the sticker of the postage stamp, on the envelope, so that it gets there, so that you're paying the service to the individuals who will help carry your words, your right to freedom of expression, when you send it. That's already a functioning world government. When people say, well, how can a world government function, or how can there be world law already? Well, that's a great example of it already functioning. It's a service to us. We appreciate it. We don't really necessarily care or need to know the background logistics and technological frameworks that are making it function, as long as it's functioning. Obviously, there's a large cadre of people out there who do know how, whether they're engineers or mathematicians or scientists or just the postal worker who's delivering your mail. All that is functioning, and it's a service to us. That's how we really see world law functioning together with world citizenship and government. It brings the world that's part of us, the natural world, the social world, and the conceptual world, all together. It's a fair system. It's a just system, talking about concepts, because we pay our little bit of a fee, perhaps, or tax, but then we get our right to freedom of expression upheld. That's, like I said, I think a great example of world law and even world government and world citizenship in action. Whereas international law, once again, it's trying to put rules on entities that have really no respect or don't inherently want to respect law. I mean, the nation-state system supports the we versus they mentality, whereas a global system supports the we, or the all of us, in a sense, mentality. There is no they. We're all 100% of humanity. So I love mentioning that example because I think it makes it clear in people's minds how government is already functioning for us, even at the global level.
Let me add one thing to that, David.
Sure.
In the United Nations, you have something called specialized agencies.
Right.
Your example of the post office is a perfect example of an agency which operates worldwide for the benefit of humanity. And I'll give you another example of that. I was a pilot, B-17 bomber pilot, and no matter where I would go, all over the world, I would come to an airfield, and I would call into the tower, and every pilot knows this, and now they all speak English, and I'd ask them for the runway where I could land on. And that's the IATA, International Air Traffic Association. So that's global. It works, etc. So we know how to operate as the FAO, World Food Organization, and so forth. And there are certain specialized agencies, but they're bound intrinsically by the frontier world of the Security Council and the other part of the United Nations. So they cannot really function as world entities. But that they can be taken over very easily by a world government, and that's one of the programs that we envisage eventually.
Okay, we have just about 10 minutes left, so there's a few questions. We're not going to get to all the topics, but again, hopefully this is going to be one of many FAQs here. So we're moving on to the World Government Document Application. Yes, sir.
Could we, because we're talking more, I think, on the philosophical level here, focus on a couple of the last questions, because I think that will take the last 10 minutes, the nation states vis-a-vis world government, and human rights and world citizenship. I think those topics are perfect for this discussion.
Okay, and so is world government trying to get rid of the nation state? That's the question that we have here.
No, world government is not able or willing to get rid of anything. It's adding the top layer. It's very simple. We're not saying when you become a world citizen, you're giving up being a citizen of your city or your state or your nation. You're adding the top layer of citizenship. You're eliminating the division between these entities and so forth. So it's like citizenship is in concentric circles. They get larger and larger and larger. And a perfect example of that was 1787, when the citizens of the United States, or the citizens of the new states actually, said, well, we're going to add a top layer on top of the 3 million people on the eastern seaboard. We just fought the Revolutionary War. We kicked King George III off our back, and now we are our own citizens of New Hampshire and Massachusetts and New York and South Carolina and so forth. But there is no law between us. We're 3 million people without law. You can't even get goods from New York to New Jersey, etc. So let's just, out of our imagination, out of our brain, we will create a higher level of citizenship. But that was 1787. And they did. It was out of their minds that they did it. Einstein said something very interesting. He said, imagination is more important than intelligence. Everything that has been created has first been imagined. This computer I'm looking at and the camera and so forth has been all imagined and so forth. Tool makers, as Bucky Fuller says, change the world, not politicians. And so you make a better tool, the world will come to your door. Everybody's now, all these kids have iPhones, etc. When I was growing up, we didn't even have television. We had radio. Look at how fast things are moving now. Here I am, 91 years old, talking to you, and happy to do it. But that's how fast we're moving.
I would add that people call us all the time here at our offices in Washington, and they may not phrase the question exactly the same way. Is the world government trying to get rid of nation states? but they might question it in a more of a perhaps fearful way, like if do I have to give something up to become a world citizen? People are, I guess, afraid of losing their unique personality or their unique identity or language group or religion or ethnicity, whatever lower level allegiance they might have. And Gary mentioned that we're not trying to either supplant or get rid of or have people give up anything. We're just having them add that higher level allegiance beyond what they already have, which people already do every day. Every time they get on the internet, they become a netizen, a citizen of the net, and can speak to anybody anywhere and at any time. So children are familiar with that. They appreciate it, they understand, they like it, and so adding this higher level allegiance is really nothing different than what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. Anyway, it's not a question of giving up. And Gary mentioned Buckminster Fuller, and that if you look at the UN system versus this world government, the UN was founded to rid the world of the scourge of war. Well, as a tool or system, that hasn't happened. There's been hundreds of wars since the founding of the United Nations. It's not doing the job that it was founded to do. This is why we say, okay, if that's not doing it, like Gary says, then move over and we'll do it. This is us, the people, saying that we need and want and demand and are going to make a different tool, a different system, not to get rid of the nation state. I mean, I love the fact that I can walk outside of our office and go to meet different people from all over the world who happen to be here in DC, either sightseeing or working, whatever, and learn about their cultures and lifestyles and differences and share them and appreciate them. And I want to continue to be able to do that, but the only way to protect the ability to do that is to move beyond those lower level allegiances to a higher one where we know that we're all the same, and then we can celebrate the lower level differences.
Amen.
Very nice. Okay, so there's just a couple more questions. This one's on human rights. What do human rights have to do with world citizenship? If you don't mind taking that one, Gary.
Well, human rights, world citizenship is bound by human rights. If you know the Declaration of Human Rights, the answer is very simple. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They're endowed with reason and conscience to act towards one another in a spirit of fellowship. Then another Article 21, the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. The will of the people, that's you, that's me, etc. So human rights and world government are all bound together. It's the laws which have to be put into place so that when those human rights are abridged, you and I, as human beings, as world citizens, can go to the court and say, our rights have been denied, and so forth. And to go back to war, the major human right is denial of life. So, I mean, the major denial of human rights is war. And so we must have a court where we can go to and say, war itself has to be outlawed, and it's got to be enforced. And I always use the example of the traffic light. I don't care where you are in the world, you're driving a car and you come up to that red light and you stop. Why? Because you recognize the justice of that red light and the common sense of that red light. But that's enforced. If you break through that red light, then you might get a ticket, you may go to jail, etc. So human rights must be enforced, and that's where the law comes in, and it's got to be world law. And from Article 6 to Article 11 in the Declaration of Human Rights, it mentions that, and that's a good place to finish because it says, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Everyone has the right everywhere to recognition as a person before the law. The only law that pertains to everyone and everywhere can be world law.
Absolutely.
That means world government.
All right, so the last question is about getting involved. So how can I get involved in the work of the WSA?
Well, I will talk now, and then I would love if Gary would have the final word today. But what I would say is one of the main things that you can do is understand and appreciate the fact that you can, here and now, today, register as a world citizen. You go to worldservice.org, fill out the form. You can even email the form in and register today and receive a world citizen card and certificate, and then share that information with your friends, your colleagues, your relatives, your elders, your students, whoever you're living with. Let them know that they can too. This is the this educational idea of sharing our world citizenship status with everyone is crucial. So that's in my mind, that's the main way to start getting involved, is by registering. And then, like we've said already, there's other documentation that World Service Authority offers that allows you to exercise other rights that you have as a person before the law, and you can do that too. There's other ability to get involved through WSA's website, such as signing on to WSA's World Citizen at yahoogroups.com, our World Citizen Forum, which has almost 5,500 people around the world, and that's building every week, who participate in this online discussion about world citizenship, about what is world government, what actions do we want it to see it take, how do we want it to help us in our daily lives. So it's a very interesting discussion at our Yahoo group. On WSA's website, there is a way where people can vote in a world referendum on global issues. I encourage you to go and see that. Gary Davis, as you're aware maybe already, has a radio show, World Citizen Radio, where many of these ideas are discussed with guests and highlighting a lot of the work that Gary has done and continues to do over the years. There's many different ways that you can get involved. Of course, as the Executive Director of World Service Authority, I would also say, and I don't mean to sound crass, but to make a donation to the work that we're doing, and there are donation buttons on the front page of worldservice.org where you can make a donation through PayPal, or a person can send in a money order, a check, Western Union payment, however they want, to help us do the work that we do on a day-to-day basis. We help refugees, we help stateless people, we help everyone who comes to us who are sort of falling through this cracks in this international non-system. We're here to try to catch them. And there's many ways to get involved, and I want to stop there and let Gary talk about other ways that he thinks that people can get involved in our work.
Well, yeah, we could do programs on that, but I want to thank you for joining us here, giving us a chance to explain. You know, we're at the right on the edge of a new age. It's been prophesied, millennia or Armageddon, etc., and it's up to us to continue the human race. And who knows what's out there waiting for us. I happen to be a Trekkie myself. I don't think we're alone in the universe, etc., but our challenge is to put ourselves together on this planet, because the test of a species is whether it can organize itself, the test of its intelligence, and we haven't done that yet. So it's up to you, it's up to me. I can't do it alone, etc. Each one of us is responsible, and that's why I say, please join the human race as citizens of the world and so forth, and we'll go out there to the stars together. Thanks a lot.
All right, and on that note, I'd like to thank both of you, for joining us here and making these this FAQ possible, the first of hopefully many to come. And I'd like to finish with a quote that Gary mentioned when we spoke earlier, and it's from Gandhi, and it says, "Be the world you want." Now, on that note, if you have any questions, chime in, and please contact the World Service Authority to follow up. Thanks for hanging out. Take care.
And thanks to you, Vibro.
Thank you.